It is Lord's Day, September 22nd, 2019, 2:30 p.m. We are here in Moka. We've been here for the past few weeks. And the last audio journal was, I believe, September 8th. So since we came in, we got the floor put on the house. We nailed it down with 4-inch nails, and the floor is made of 2x6s. So there were about 90, and we have 2 rows of them. So we used almost about 200 pieces of 2x6, which was the most expensive part of buying all the material. We got all of the walls built, the 4 sides of the perimeter, and then the long interior wall as well. We got them all built. They're under the house now. I had the floor tarped with 2 large tarps, which they were not doing the best job of keeping the floor protected and dry, so we just took them off. And over the next month or so, before we come back, the floor will just be out in the rain. So we're hoping that the rain and the sun don't damage the floor too much. When Dad and I and Rich Zolnick come back in October and work through November, we will, Lord willing, get all the walls stood up, the trusses built and on, the battens on, the roof on, and then all the plywood siding on. And then the house will pretty much be livable then. We'll do the window boxes. We will maybe do some plumbing and some other things. So that's the goal for working on a house over the next month or so. That's the work that we have accomplished so far. While we are here in Moka, we have 2 evangelistic preaching meetings every week, Thursday mornings and Lord's Day mornings. And this morning, here at Moka 1, which is where we live, I preached from Acts 17, verses 3, 4, and 5, how Paul explains the gospel, that God the Father designated Jesus to save his people. And then in verse 4, how people believed. So I encourage the people here that needs to be their response, to believe and to follow Christ. And then in verse 5, it showed how the Jews, which the people call here the mission line, which is like a church group, denomination type thing, how the Jews didn't believe and they caused problems. One of the biggest difficulties we have here in Moka doing pioneer gospel work is dealing with other false religions. There's one specific group here that we have to constantly battle with and deal with. So we continue to preach the gospel, and we know that Jesus will save his people, call them out, and build his church here, cause the gospel to advance. That's what we pray for. We're learning the language. We're making the initial slow steps to do that so that we can preach and communicate the gospel to them more directly, and then also translate the scriptures in the future. This afternoon, which we just got back from this trip about 15 minutes ago, we went down to Moka 2, which is down the Turama River south, heading towards the coast and towards the Gulf of Papua. And it's only 5 minutes in the dinghy with our 40 horsepower motor, so it doesn't take too long to get there. And we know most of the people there because they come up here often too to get medicine things. So we went down there, and we had a time at the beginning for Melissa to help the people medically. Some of them had sores, and she gives out medicine and pain medicine, things like that. There's a guy there, his name is Stalkin, and he allowed us to meet under their house. They used to have a public, what they call a wind house, which is just a public place for people to sit down with a roof. That fell down, so we didn't have anywhere to really meet. And thankfully, this man let us come under his house, and the people gathered. And then I preached from Mark chapter 1, where Jesus calls Simon and Andrew, and then James and John, and they follow him. And so I encouraged and challenged the people to do the same thing as Jesus calls them to follow him for salvation and forgiveness of their sins, that they would do just like those guys did and follow him. And it also relates to the people here, because in that passage in Mark 1, there were fishermen fixing their nets, getting fish and selling them. And the people here do the exact same thing, so it related well to them that way. It has been raining here non-stop almost. We've had a few nice days, but the majority have been wet and rainy, which has been miserable. And that's missionary life on the frontier of rainforest. And tomorrow we're going to be having a big community meeting with all the people here. It'll probably be a fairly big crowd to talk about the construction of the airstrip here directly in Moka. And then there's a few other things that we'll talk about. And so hopefully that goes well. The people are interested in getting the airstrip built and constructed. We want to get the company's bulldozer or another group, organization, or company to help us with that. If we have to do it by hand, that'll be very difficult. If we could get a bulldozer in here to level and to mound the ground to make drains on the side, that would be extremely helpful. So we're going to talk about that tomorrow. Jacob is also building us a canoe, a very large one that we can put our motor on and have our own boat to travel around. And Lord willing, when we come back next month, it'll be done. I want it to dry for a little bit, and then after that we'll paint it. So make sure we get it somewhere so it could dry off. But that'll be a big help. So we have our own vessel. It's been difficult here to use other people's motors, so we got our own, then to use other people's boats. So now we're getting our own. We got the work on the house done a lot quicker than I expected with the floor and building the walls, so that was encouraging. And so we actually ran out of work to do pretty much the last week here. So when we come back, we'll get right into it, hopefully get the house finished. I had Hanson come Thursday, Friday, and Saturday to help me with the language about an hour a day. He's probably the best language helper here. He knows a little bit of English too, which helps, and he communicates well. And also speaks the language well. He's one of the traditional local men here at Moka. Most of them aren't actually. They have married in from other villages and even language groups. So it helps that he's directly from here. So I had him come for the 3 days. The other day, on I believe it was Wednesday, when we finished the work with the guys, I cut the tarp up, gave them each a piece, and then told them to come tomorrow morning, which was Thursday morning, since I talked to them on Wednesday. I said, all of you come tomorrow morning when I preach. We have our meetings at the school building here. And then I had a big argument with Seymour, who's one of my friends, but he's the leader of the other religious group here that's not evangelical at all. And so we had some discussion and debate about certain things, and he doesn't know the scriptures well, so he's just believed and followed all the things that he's been taught from other false teachers. So hopefully I told him to think about the things we talk about, and I told him too when we come back that we can have a men's Bible study and we could all sit down and just discuss the Bible together and see what the scriptures actually teach. And he said he was willing to do that, so that's encouraging. Hopefully that's true, and when we begin to settle here more full-time in January, after the house is built, that we can begin that. And we're praying that the Lord would soften his heart to the scriptures and to the gospel, that he would see the errors of the false religion he's following and believe in the gospel and be a true disciple of Christ. Some of the main things that are coming up for us over the next month or so, one of them is the next order we're going to put in at the hardware store in Moresby, so we can get all the rest of the material shipped up here. And Lord willing, it'll arrive in October. And it will be the water tank, the gutters, the ridge cap for the roof, some nails, the trim, and most of all, the plywood for all the siding of the house. I'm going to order around 200 pieces of thin plywood, which will be the sheeting to cover all of the walls, external and internal. So that's a big thing, to purchase them and then have them shipped up. We're thankful for everyone who's given funds so that we can buy all the materials to build the house. We've been praying that there'll be good weather for Tuesday when the plane comes to pick us up here in New Guinea. The travel is much different and much more difficult than back in the States where we're from. And so the planes cannot fly when it's cloudy. So it's always a concern when the planes have to drop us off or pick us up that there's good weather so that they can actually fly. So we're praying about that. As I've said many times before, this is what pioneer gospel missions looks like, especially at the beginning stages. For us coming here to an unevangelized people, where there are no true believers or disciples of Christ, preaching the gospel, learning language, building a house, doing medical work, all this stuff is what we do for us to live here and be able to do our ministry. One of the main things that we've been praying for a few years now is that the Lord would raise up other couples to join us to help in this ministry and this work so that we can have help and accomplish more. It would be good to have more permanent, what they call a house sick or a clinic type thing. It would be good if we could even start a kids' school to teach the kids, and obviously from a religious and biblical, gospel-centered perspective. It would be good if we could start a Bible school to teach the people more from the scriptures directly. So having other people here to help, learning the language, doing translation work, evangelizing more. The more couples we have, the more work that we could do. So that's one of our main prayer requests as well. So we will be flying out of Faya, which is the village with the airstrip. And we have to use that until we get an airstrip built here in Faya at Moka. So we go up the river to Faya, and it takes, say, about 2 hours or so. If we go really fast, we could make it in maybe an hour and a half. And that'll be Tuesday. We're going to go back to Ukarumpa, which is the mission compound. Then we're going to rent a car and drive to Leh, which is about a 4-hour drive, heading east from the compound all the way to the coast, which is far east of where we are here in Moka as well. And we're going to go to hardware stores and food stores to get all the supplies we need for the next few months. And then we'll plan to come back here to Moka in October. But it'll just be me, my dad, and Rich. Melissa and the kids will stay back since it'll just be a building trip.
Hi, this is Elijah speaking. My dad, I've been having a great time here. My dad made a kids Moka to-do list for us, so we don't always have to complain about what we always want to do. I'll read it to you. Coloring, clay, butterflies, chores, read, prayer, fire, listen, cut grass, carve. And that's 10 of them. We're right now trying to get to 30, but we only have 25. Thank you.
Hi, this is Bella. I like collecting clay, and building a fire, and I like catching butterflies, reading my book in the tent.
So that's some of the stuff that Elijah and Bella have said. It's been a little difficult, or more than little. It's been very difficult for us to live in this little village house prior to getting our main house built. For many of you who do know, the village house here is made of pretty much sticks with corrugated metal roofing. And we sleep in a tent. We spend a lot of time in there once the sun goes down. And the entire house is about 14 by 14. So it's pretty small. So once we do get the main house built, it'll make life here a lot more easy, and we could focus more of our time on the actual ministry. So that's an update here at the end of September 2019.